Hi, everyone, and welcome to the sixth episode of Arketi Live in 25. I'm Mike Newmeyer, CEO and founder of Arketi Group, and hopefully you have heard of us. But if this is your first time, we're an Atlanta-based integrated PR and digital marketing firm serving B2B technology clients. With that aside, today's conversation is all about workplace and marketplace communications and why alignment across the two is essential for brand integrity today. But before we dive in, allow me to introduce two of the smartest minds I know on this topic. First up, Brandon Harris, the Chief Marketing Officer of InvestCloud, a global leader in wealth and asset management solution. Brandon is a full stack marketer who brings a wealth of experience to the table, having worked in sales, communications, brand, product marketing, and everything in between. Joining him is Jason Anthone, Managing Director of Arketi Inside, our new workplace change and communications offering. Jason has dedicated his career to leading all things internal communications for brands like GE, Newell, Verint, and many others. Thank you all for joining us to touch on a very important topic. Quick reminder before we dive in, we are live. So viewers, if you have thoughts, reactions, or questions along the way, simply drop them in the chat below and we'll tackle them in real time as best as we can. And if there's something we miss, we'll circle back with it afterwards. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in and toss a question out to you with, why do you think so many companies today struggle to connect the external and the external brand with what employees actually experience inside the organization? This is a jump ball. Who wants to take it?
Happy to jump in there. Look, I'll start. I think there's two main reasons, probably many reasons, but two reasons I'll bring up. One, silos. I think these things are not done together. When you think about your brand and externally, whether it's for a selling or recruitment standpoint, that is done in one place. And oftentimes, if there is a plan or an EVP and employee value prop for employees, that is done in a separate place. And so those two things, if they are both happening, are usually happening separately. But I would say the second part to that is most times that second part is not happening at all. The strategy is not always there for employees. And if there is, it definitely doesn't have the same kind of resources as are put behind the external piece that everyone cares about, that everyone's looking for ROI behind, but kind of neglecting that part of, okay, well, once they're here, what are we doing inside to make sure it matches what we said outside?
That is spot on from my perspective. And I would also add to that, Brandon, that it feels like marketing does a fantastic job of making all these promises in the marketplace. And sometimes employees aren't clear on what promises they're now expected to keep. So sometimes, that comes down to, just pure marketing or the employer value proposition, things like that. Other times it's truly, we shared the strategy in the town hall and we emailed it out to all the leaders. If employees don't understand it, then we can't really understand why. Well, there's a million reasons why, and they're the same reasons your customers might have for not buying products from you. It's not clear to them what the value proposition is, not clear, what kind of action you want folks to take. And I think that, that shows up in what we're saying externally and how we're experiencing that internally and what we can do to help, drive those things for both audiences, customers and employees.
Jason, I'm going to follow up on that. What are the risks to businesses and organizations out there when the internal and external message starts to drift apart?
Yeah, I think, to me, the biggest risk is that say-do gap. especially if we're, externally, we're saying, here's who we are, here's what we stand for, here's our products, here's the kind of organization that we are and what we support and what we believe in. And then certainly customers hear that, but employees also hear that. But if their experience day to day doesn't match what those words are, that's when you start to get a little bit of, something's not quite right here. And so, that say-do gap, I think, is an important one. And a lot of times this kind of comes up with mission and purpose. Like, we're gonna clean up all the water in South America. Okay, great. That's your purpose. Whatever it is great. However, you have to make all of your business decisions aligned around that. And if your biggest supplier is somehow polluting all the water in South America, are you going to fire them? Because that's what you expect. That's what your employees expect if that's the promise that you're making. So I think there's that whole say-do gap, and it's a tough thing. You got to be careful about the promises that you make because customers and employees expect you to keep them.
100%. No, I would say exactly the same. To put those in words, frustration and resentment. Just like anything you buy, as an employee, you're buying something that the company sold you. And if you're getting there and that's not the product you received, you're frustrated, you resent them, potentially. You're definitely not going to be your most productive self. And so that starts to deteriorate credibility instantly when those two things don't match. And then it's hard to get the most out of anybody once they're there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And isn't it true? I mean, I was going to say back in the old days, but it's not even the old days. It's not that long ago. You use consumers, customers, whether it be B2B or B2C, didn't really have much of a glimpse inside an organization's culture or ethos through the eyes of an employee experience. Today, it's I was going to say translucent. In some organizations, it's totally transparent, like you're looking through a sliding glass door.
100%. I mean, with social media, with all the websites, Glassdoor, etc., there's so many ways to learn about a place internally before you get there, and it's powerful for folks to be able to see that beforehand. And it's something I think most companies need to pay more attention to. And I think everyone, they pay, what are people saying about us and things like that. But I don't know that enough effort is done proactively. And more oftentimes you see the reactiveness to certain things. Once again, there's still not a plan. How do we prevent this versus how do we get through this? And so I just think it's a change in mindset of making it a priority before it has to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And Brandon, when we first started off, you mentioned the word silos, which comes up all the time, especially in the internal comms world. And I think, there's this, or there used to be, and I don't know if it was even true then, there was this perception that, all right, we say stuff externally and we say stuff internally, and never the two shall meet. I don't know that was ever true. It might have been true, but it's certainly not true now. Like almost every single internal memo, live streaming town halls all that stuff is now accessible, right or wrong, and whether they ought to be doing it or not. But all that stuff's accessible, and so you better be really clear on what it is you're saying internally, and with the assumption that it's going to be the headline in the Wall Street Journal the next day. And even just thinking about it that way, I think helps you sort of change your mindset about how close the brand and the culture are for your organization, and how that's the impact that what you say internally could have externally. Now you have to think about it.
Sure. Well, riffing off that, let's look at this from an ideal prospect for a minute. What does it actually look like when a company is aligned from inside out, and how can you tell that alignment exists?
Yeah.
I'll jump in there. I think the result of that, when that happens, you get advocacy, you get engagement. I think whether you are a prospect or once you're already in there, you can tell pretty quickly, okay, this is aligned. And so if you pitched me something and you gave me what I thought I was getting, I'm going to go tell everyone about it. I'm going to shout from the rooftops that this is as promised. And that's what you want. You want to build that engagement, that advocacy. You can also see it from externally. If you are looking at a place and you don't see anyone shouting from the rooftops, maybe a company's Instagram is curated perfectly. We do all these things and it's so fun and great, and everyone wants to work here, and it doesn't feel like work. And but if you check people's personal posts or different websites, or even just talk to friends, because all these groups everyone's connected, especially even certain industries, certain types of companies. Someone who worked there, someone else who used to work there knows somebody, and when those things don't match, what someone is putting out there versus what you are hearing, it becomes very clear where it is matching, or it is really more of an illusion that is being created.
Brandon, I love that word advocacy. I was just talking with Katie and Adam, who were presenting some buyer's journey information. And it seems like as marketers, we always forget, like, that last part of the buyer's journey is advocacy. 100%. And the sale does not end once the transaction happens. But really creating advocates is the ultimate nirvana. So.
Yeah, it's really true, especially with employees. I mean, think about it. Most of us, all of us, spend the majority of our lives at work. And so it ought to make a difference. You ought to feel good about it, and you ought to be appreciated for, the time that you're invested. All those things kind of combine to create as much employee loyalty as we're always trying to chase around customers and their loyalty. And so, long gone are the days where you're going to start at one company and stay there, 65 years and get a gold watch when you retire. So, we want people to be loyal and committed, but everyone, has to have a reason to do that. And I'm sorry, but just a paycheck is not enough anymore. Like, there has to be reasons for me to believe. I have to be aligned with what we're doing here. People have to care that I'm actually doing it. And so if you'll engage me, I'll reward you, the organization, with my engagement and my pride and my advocacy. And if you don't do that, then I'm not going to offer that in return.
Okay, well, as CMOs and other executives start to pay attention to the gap between workplace and marketplace, where should they focus first? What's a smart starting point to drive real alignment?
I was going to say it is alignment. It's making sure all the right people in the room when you're thinking about what those strategies are. So whether it's marketing, communications, HR, whoever's handling recruitment and employee engagement, all those folks have to be aligned and building strategy not in a silo. This is how we are going external, whether on purpose or this is just how we are perceived. And how do we make sure that happens inside? I mentioned an EVP before, and an employee value prop. Everyone should have that. There should be a true strategy, a true plan.
Mm-hmm.
And when we plan anything externally, it can't become ad hoc internally. If you leave it up to happen organically inside, while being very deliberate and intentional outside, you're not going to find the connection points that you mean to, and you are probably going to end up having a disconnect between those two things. So alignment and a true strategy on both ends, to me, is paramount to making sure, that's the right place to start and finish, honestly.
Yeah. I love that word alignment. It's so powerful. And it strikes me that I've had a number of conversations, especially lately, about the difference between alignment and agreement. Like, we don't all have to have agreement. Like, in fact, we don't want that. It's diversity of thoughts and ideas and disagreements that drive innovation. So we don't want everybody to just be, yep, whatever you say, yep. Like, that's not what we want. But once we all sort of get aligned and agreed on something, then we need alignment. We expect alignment, And so I think a lot of organizations really chase trying to get 100% agreement, and that's not necessary to have alignment. And so I really buy into that whole idea around alignment and understanding what employees want and what they need so that they can be aligned. They truly want to be. A lot of organizations are like, they work on the front lines. It's okay if they don't really understand our strategy. Are you kidding me? they're the ones where the rubber hits the road there. They of all the people need to be aligned.
And just to add on to that, I think that brings up the other point. Something else is making sure you have that feedback loop, the making sure you understand what employees are feeling, what they're thinking, what they want. I see a lot of these break down where you can still have those HR, marketing, communications groups in alignment and not in a silo, but then the silo becomes the employees, where now we're just thinking up, this is what they want, to hear, to feel, to do, and you're not getting that feedback because everyone's not the same. Also, one size doesn't fit all. So when we think about internal brands and how employees should feel and how we want to engage them, that has to, the same way you would not put out the same marketing campaign, in the U.S. as you might, in India. You're not going to put the same, employee plan out. This is everyone. This fits everyone. Wears the same size. We're going to treat them all the same way and expect them to engage all in the same way. So that's also where I see a breakdown sometimes in actually making this work.
Definitely.
Yeah, I love
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, I love the fact, Brendan, that you brought up the employee value proposition, and it was called out in the comments that there's the misconception that value propositions only apply to customers and clients and don't apply to employees. So that's something as marketers we need to consciously take an effort at. And I do think, Jason, that as suggested by one of our viewers, coming out later this year will be the T-shirt with "Mind the Say Do Gap" on it.
Got a very British feel to it.
Right.
Yes, maybe we'll take it across the pond there. Okay, if you guys could wave your magic wand and get executive teams to truly believe one thing about brand, culture, alignment, what would it be besides endless marketing budgets?
I was going to say, look, it matters financially. At the end of the day, it's one of those things you think it's a nice to have, or we should do it, or it's feel good, or any of these things. It matters, retention, productivity, recruitment. These are all things that cost money. I think Jason has a stat for how much it costs to replace an employee, which I think he'll mention. It's a lot of money. If you're not getting the full productivity, if you're getting 50% of someone's effort because they quit because they don't think that they are getting what they thought they should get at the place they're working, well, now you have half a person. And so that does have a financial impact. And I think that's the one thing people have to appreciate. This is not just we should do it, or maybe we could think about how it fits. If you don't, you're losing money. The opportunity cost is too high. And so I think everyone has to really, when you think about the strategy, you write it all down on paper. What are we missing out on? And really do the math, because that also informs how much you actually want to put into it. Going back to, hey, we're going to spend a lot more externally than we do internally. It's easy to say, hey, this is going to net me $100 million. But internally, how much am I going to lose? How many millions am I going to spend on new recruitment efforts, retention efforts, having to hire twice as many people, kind of getting half as much effort for each of them. So I just think it's hugely important to put that financial part, or else it doesn't matter to most folks. Most CEOs aren't going to care unless you put that financial aspect to it.
You're exactly right. I mean, the C-suite only cares about three things: revenue, cost, and risk. And unless you're talking in those three categories, you're not going to get whatever the seat at the table is that you're looking for, because that's what they're all focused on, and quite frankly should be. And so as internal communicators or HR people or folks who are responsible for those types of things, who are usually on the cost side of the balance sheet, there's all kinds of ways that you can not only control costs, but also, prove the impact on the revenue side as well. Like Brandon, you mentioned that stat, like it's about 3 to 4 times whatever the total comp is for that employee to re-recruit them and replace them. And if you have 30, 40, 50% turnover, it is really quick to get to a number with a lot of zeros about what that turnover is costing you. And a lot of times that turnover is around, people don't appreciate me, I don't understand what's going on here, I'm not really aligned with the mission or the purpose. Those types of things, they have real cost that can be, controlled, and real risk that can be mitigated, and a lot of engagement and pride that can be focused towards the revenue side. And, I've been here at Arketi now for about 6 or 7 months almost, and I've learned a lot about marketing that I've not learned prior to this. And one of the things I hear all the time is customer acquisition costs. There's also an employee acquisition cost. How much does it cost to recruit that employee? What all goes into the cost of getting that employee? And then just like with a customer who has a lifetime value, employees also have a lifetime value. There's a way to figure out what those things add up when you talk about the recruiting and the onboarding, the comp and retention and all the contributions that they're making. So there's easy ways to take what's already being done in marketing for customers and think about that employees in the same way, so that it makes it easier to have those kinds of conversations with folks who are focused on revenue and cost and risk all day long.
That's great. Well, Jason, we're glad you've been here at Arketi. In the last many months, I've been experimenting with AI. That's Anthone intelligence. And the one thing that sticks with me is when it comes to executives talking about cascading communications down to employees, it's important to remember that cascade only works in the dishwasher.
Right?
Did I get that right?
Yeah.
There we go. Awesome. Right. A little easy AI, Anthone intelligence from Arketi Inside, which is also AI. Thank you to everyone for joining us today for this edition of Arketi Live in 25. We really appreciate you spending a short bit of your day with us. If you have any follow-up questions or thoughts, feel free to drop us a line. We'd love to keep the conversation going. And if you haven't seen, we're gearing up to host our 19th annual Tech CMO Roundtable next month on October 23rd. If you're interested in joining us, visit techcmoroundtable.com or look on our LinkedIn profile and you will see it all over the place to request a seat. We are going to continue this conversation about the interplay between marketplace and workplace communications at the beginning of that session. And until next time, thanks again. We'll see you soon on Arketi Live in 25.